Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Eric Darnley Small. And on today's show, I just want to do something somewhat, I don't like to be an alarmist and I don't like to be somebody who spends a whole lot of time worrying about what may happen. However, I think it's instructive what we're seeing right now in America under Donald Trump and under the MAGA movement. What's happening right now is, I think, something akin to what happened in the early days leading up to the Civil War. And a lot of people are using that analogy, and I don't think it is being done to fearmonger or inaccurately. I actually think that something really is going on here. And white rural rage, which I talked about in a previous episode, is one of the places to take a look at as far as who, the history of this, where it comes from, what's going on in the country, and how it compares to other times in this country. White rural rage. You can take a look at that. I'm sure Amazon, you can pick up that book. But basically, what's happening, as I understand it, in the early stages of the Civil War, what was happening is states that were basically Confederate states began seceding, not whole states, but counties and municipalities began seceding, and then states began seceding and began doing things that were illiberal, breaking laws, doing all kind of crazy stuff, particularly with respect to voting. And that brings me to today's show. And this was a article out of CBS not that long ago. I think it was a couple of days ago, May 21st. So what was that? Yesterday. And the title is Michigan County Refuses to Certify Vote, Prompting Fears of a Growing Election Threat This Fall. And the idea here is that we're once again back to this notion of voter fraud, and that the country is somehow awash in voter fraud and all this kind of business. And it's important to note that this is being done to, in fact, create a fraudulent view about what is happening in the country, so that people can give themselves permission to do the wrong thing come 2024, the election this year. And this is where it begins. These small little elections is where you want to start looking at this stuff. And Michigan, remember, is a swing state. Parts of it are very red, very Republican, anti Joe Biden, very much, militias and all this kind of business. But it's a must-win state for Democrats. This one of these situations where, unlike Republicans, they sort of have sewn up all of their the states that they need to get to 270 and to win elections perpetually. But Democrats are always having to fight because the Republican parties in their states are really motivated to make sure that they win all the time. Gerrymandering is an example of that. So, going back to this article, this says when a board of canvassers in the tiny Delta County, Michigan, refused to certify its local election results for a county commission race last week, the defiant decision raised concerns among election experts and officials about where the 2024 campaign could land in November. Again, this is a state that is a must-win for Biden. Anyone who sees this latest incident in Delta County should be incredibly alarmed, said Mark Elias, a Democratic lawyer who has led legal efforts against election conspiracy activists around the country. We all need to take incidents like this seriously and see it as a wake-up call for what we are almost certain to see this fall. The local vote, which was eventually certified under pressure from state officials, attracted little outside attention. But some election experts believe there will be efforts to replicate Delta County's refusal to certify. All of these tactics are designed to paralyze election administration systems nationwide in an effort to force them to fail and undermine voters' faith in the process. These anti-democracy groups are taking these steps because they want to discredit elections if they lose. That's from Kim Rogers. Doubts about fraud or cheating in American elections emerged during the 2020 campaign and have continued to grow. A CBS News poll of Arizona voters released Monday found that about half of former President Donald Trump's current voters say now that they'd want to challenge the results if he loses. Delta County is a conservative rural part of Michigan's Upper Peninsula that has consistently voted for Trump. The decision to stall a local election certification last week was fueled by outside groups of election conspiracy activists, local officials told CBS News. Since February 2023, a group called Citizens for Electoral Justice has engaged in discussions with Republican officials in Delta County, including the canvasser who refused to certify. In a photo released on a community Facebook page, a group called the Delta County Citizens said it was working closely with two organizations that raise concerns about suspicious voting ratios that warrant further investigation. The county election clerk in Delta, who administers the election, told CBS News there were no voting irregularities in this low turnout local recall election with only 4,550 votes. We matched the numbers of voters to the number of ballots to the number of ballots counted by tabulation. All the numbers match 100%. The county clerk, a Republican, has been administering elections for more than 23 years and said this is absolutely about November, getting ready for what might happen. If the vote doesn't go their way, it's not going to be a good situation. They are going to find the same issues with certifying the election in November as they do now. Last Tuesday, 4 canvassers met at a courthouse in Escabana to certify the results. Republican canvasser Bonnie Hakola announced to the group that she would not certify based on her concerns about how the election had been run. She and the other Republican canvasser, an alternate canvasser who was filling in for the day, blocked an election certification for the first time in county history. John Myers, one of the Democratic canvassers, said he was taken aback. Myers, who has been a canvasser for more than 14 years, said the certification hangs on whether the total number of votes cast equal the total number of voters, which he said occurred in this election. He said he thought the whole process would last 10 minutes. Video of this session isn't available because the canvassing sessions aren't taped. But Hakola, the vice chair of the 1st District Republican Party, has made several conspiracy-laden public statements voicing concerns about the reliability of voting machines. Hakola could not be reached for comment. Scott Arganey of the Citizens for Electoral Justice told CBS News he had been in contact with local officials in Delta County for more than a year. He says Delta County officials initiated contact with the organization ahead of the certification. Putting pressure on local officials to cast doubt on the voting process is part of the national strategy, says Rogers, a Democratic strategist. These groups are working to undermine the public trust of our elections, and ultimately our ability to respond to that threat is going to change the direction of this country. The county clerk says the groups are pressuring her to release voter roll data that contains protected personal information, which the state says is illegal to distribute publicly. County clerks are caught between that group and the Secretary of State's office, she said. It's a tough situation to be in. 2 days after the canvassers refused to certify the local vote, the Secretary of State's office sent the Delta County Clerk's office a letter to advise it of the consequences if the vote was not certified. The Constitution of Michigan election law do not authorize boards of county canvassers to refuse to certify election results based on claims made by third parties of alleged election irregularities or a general desire to conduct election investigations, the letter says. Failure to certify would mean that the clerk would have to personally deliver all records, including ballots and voting machines, to Michigan state canvassers at all the county's own expense. The price tag, the letter adds pointedly, will be expansive. The letter was signed by the Director of Elections, Secretary of the Board of State of Canvassers. At a swiftly scheduled follow-up vote Friday evening, the canvassers voted to certify the vote, with 3 voting in favor and Hakola abstaining. So, what is going on here? What is the real significance of this? What we're seeing are pressure campaigns or tests to see if our election system can withstand this. Part of what I believe we're seeing here is the Republican Party is filling its roles with people who are election deniers, who no longer have faith in the process because they've been listening to lies. The fascinating part about this, once again, is you're seeing this divide in the Republican Party. This is not a Democrat. This isn't like Detroit, Michigan. This is a red part of Michigan. So they're saying that their own voters are cheating. They're saying that the officials, who are all Republicans, some for 20 something years, are lying and are cheating people out of the vote. So I talked about last week about this effort to gum up the works over a new district in Louisiana. The Supreme Court had decided that Louisiana, given its population and number of African Americans, it had to create a district that was for African Americans, a mainly African American district. And one of the things that was fascinating to me is how much the Republicans, who are people who are in office, were railing against these outsiders who are coming in and who are messing with the system because they have a job to do. They may all have an R next to their name. They may all be Republicans. But at the end of the day, they're also election officials. And when you're saying that those people are committing fraud and are lying, that's extremely offensive. And I'm very curious to see how this plays out around the world and around our nation. Because for Republicans to sit back and say, and this happened in Georgia again, you've got this guy Raffensperger and others slamming these conspiracy theorists, right? And Jeff Duncan, as I talked about before, who I disagree with his framing of immigration and Joe Biden. He very interestingly said, I'm voting for Joe Biden because of what these guys have done to our state in our elections. And he's a lieutenant governor of Georgia, a very conservative dude who probably voted with Donald Trump 99% of the times. And he said, I'm not going to continue this. So you've got people who are professionals who have a job to do versus a bunch of people who are motivated by conspiracy theories and folks coming from outside. And it's happening first in very Republican, red parts of the state. This is causing, I think, a lot of agita among Republicans, and I'm very curious to see what this could or would do to not only the ability or the desire for people to come out and vote that are Republican, but also the desire for people to remain Republican and continue to endorse this kind of crazy stuff. Thank you for joining me on today's show, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey there, fantastic viewers. Eric Darnley Small here, and I hope you're loving today's episode of What You Missed. You've reached the end of today's show, but don't worry, there's more show coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click the bell so that you'll be notified when more content is available. You can also help the channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm find new viewers so that I can keep bringing you all this incredible content you enjoy. But wait, there are more ways to support the show. You can make a contribution through the show's PayPal, which goes a long way in helping produce even better content for you. And consider becoming a part of our growing community by joining our Mastodon site at mastodon.vtip.me/@whatyoumissed for more engaging discussions and exclusive updates. And here's something you won't want to miss. Mark your calendars for our live show streaming on YouTube and stream.vtip.me Monday mornings, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your support means the world to me, and together we're making What You Missed the best it can be. Thanks for being a part of my journey.